Hey everyone, my name is Antonio and I'm on the customer success team. In this video, we'll cover the topic of chargebacks and what we think is important for you to know as an event organizer. Today in this video, we'll cover a couple topics. First, what is a chargeback? How does EventBrite handle chargebacks? What are your responsibilities as an event organizer for chargebacks? We'll cover some best practices in preventing chargebacks, as well as answer some of your frequently asked questions. First, I want to talk to you a little bit about what a chargeback is. Chargebacks, by definition, are a demand by a credit or debit card provider for a retailer or merchant on record to make good the loss of a fraudulent or a disputed transaction. More specifically, in the context of EventBrite, chargebacks happen when a buyer of a ticket or registration disputes a charge and requests a refund directly from their credit card issuer. The cardholder's financial institution then investigates if the cardholder should have been charged or if they deserve a refund. It's really important for us to understand that chargebacks can be initiated through a few different routes. The consumer can initiate a chargeback. They'll dispute the transaction with their bank or institution. And some of the examples of why they might do this is if the consumer didn't recognize the charge, the consumer was told that they would receive a refund, but they didn't actually receive it, or the consumer didn't get the advertised product, experience, or service. The other way that a chargeback can be initiated is by the issuing bank or institution. They can file that chargeback without necessarily notifying the consumer or buyer. This most often happens if there's a fraudulent order or there's an issue of identity theft. In this next part of the video, we'll cover and talk about how EventBrite handles chargebacks when they're received. It's really important to note that EventBrite's policies and processes may adapt or change over time. So, for the most up-to-date information on how we handle chargebacks, our merchant agreement and our help center are the sources of truth. Before I dive in, I want to be sure that we provide some definitions and ensure that there's an understanding of the vernacular I'm using when describing our processes. Some of these may be pretty obvious, but we don't want to make any assumptions. So the first term is pre-event chargeback. A pre-event chargeback is received prior to the scheduled event start date. Post-event chargeback is a chargeback that's received after the scheduled event end date. An accepted chargeback is a chargeback that EventBrite will not fight. EventBrite will void the tickets and/or registrations if it's not a fraudulent chargeback, and then EventBrite will charge the organizer for the loss either by voiding a pre-event chargeback, or if it's in the case of a post-event chargeback, we'll apply a charge on your account. Next is fighting a chargeback. This is a chargeback that EventBrite will work to dispute and prevent a loss. This is done by creating a representment document that includes all the evidence and arguments against the reason why that chargeback was initiated. Once the chargeback is initiated and sent to EventBrite, we determine if it was a pre-event chargeback or a post-event chargeback, or if it was deemed as a fraudulent charge. We're going to discuss a few of the scenarios that EventBrite will fight pre-event chargebacks. The first reason why we would fight a pre-event chargeback is if we receive a chargeback and the event was canceled, postponed, or rescheduled, and you as the organizer offered a make-good offer. The reason why we'll fight this is because the buyer or attendees have already received an alternative to a refund. Second is if the event has been canceled or postponed or rescheduled, and there's a government mandate prohibiting the event from happening. The reason why is some credit card issuers have actually acknowledged that the government mandates are not an eligible reason for chargebacks. Next, we're going to talk about when EventBrite accepts pre-event chargebacks. The first reason why we'll accept a pre-event chargeback is pretty obvious. If the order is determined to be true fraud, the loss, even if we try to fight it, is very certain to occur. Second is if the event is not canceled or postponed. This also avoids any potential chargeback loss, and the tickets or registrations can go back in your inventory and be sold again. That way, you don't have to risk both servicing an attendee and also losing an order amount in case of a lost chargeback. Now we're going to shift to post-event chargebacks. Again, these are for chargebacks after an event date has passed. EventBrite will fight most all chargebacks that come in after an event has ended, except for these types of situations. So, if an order is determined to be true fraud, like we talked about before, even if we try to fight it, the loss is certain to occur. If the organizer tells EventBrite to accept the chargeback, this is the prerogative of you as an event organizer. So if you tell us to accept the loss, we will go ahead and do that, and you'll be charged the applicable fees. And lastly, if there was a processing error of the transaction, this most often happens with duplicate transactions. There are two primary responsibilities that an EventBrite organizer has in the context of chargebacks, aside from pursuing some of the best practices to prevent chargebacks that I'll talk about in a moment. First, is to be sure to provide evidence and supporting documentation to EventBrite when emailed or asked by our trust and safety team. We want to be sure that we have everything we need to fight a chargeback on your behalf. Some of you may be thinking, where can I find more information about chargebacks for my events? Well, the way that we communicate with you, and specifically for collecting documentation, is through email. So make sure you're checking your account email. The second obligation that you have as an organizer is understanding that if we lose a chargeback, that is your responsibility via our merchant agreement to pay the associated fees that may be incurred. EventBrite is providing a service that not many other merchants provide by having a dedicated team and increased staffing and resources dedicated to preventing and fighting chargebacks on your behalf. Now we're going to cover some of the best practices in preventing chargebacks. These are just a few of them, and we've learned through the industry as well as our own experience as a merchant that we highly recommend that you try to consider. Include detailed event descriptions. Be sure that you're representing your event and your policies on refunds, transfers, any make-good offers clearly and accurately. Be sure to provide superior customer service. Make sure that you provide a clear method of contact and respond to inquiries in a timely manner, especially if a customer is dissatisfied. Next is process timely refunds. Long wait times can lead to strong customer frustration, so we suggest processing refunds within 2 to 3 days of receiving those requests. Next is offering make goods or alternative refunds. Beyond issuing a full refund, you can also offer alternative solutions like a gift card, a discount for a future event, or you can transfer them to another event and make that ticket valid. Next is notifying EventBrite for chargebacks that may have been received, but you have already refunded the order. This avoids adding a chargeback count as well as fees that may occur. Be sure that you track your own patterns of dissatisfaction. Look out for any patterns or ways to solve the root causes of receiving these chargebacks. And lastly, make sure you keep participation records. Some chargebacks are filed with claims that a consumer never received that product or service, but if they actually did, keeping a record of that participation helps us provide evidence to fight that chargeback on your behalf. Before letting you go, I want to cover some of the frequently asked questions related to chargebacks. The first question is something that I'm sure if we took a step back or remember our own experience as a consumer, we can understand why an attendee might consider filing a chargeback. But to address the frequently asked question, why attendees file chargebacks, in short, to receive assurance of a ticket or registration refund. As the economy and world shifts and changes, so does the confidence in receiving a refund for the product or service that they, in their eyes, may not have received. Our history shows that frequent communications and fast responses to attendee inquiries serve to reduce concerns. If attendees are kept up to date frequently of the circumstances of any event, they are less likely to charge back. Also, if the creator reaches out to attendees to communicate plans or offer alternative resolutions, there are definitely fewer chargebacks. The second question is, I've set a no refund policy. Why am I receiving a chargeback? Well, a no refund policy does not protect you 100% of the time from chargebacks, especially since the chargeback process may be initiated by the consumer or their credit card issuer or institution. Even if you have a no refund policy, then, whether you win or lose, a chargeback comes down to the circumstances prevented by the consumer and how the issuing institution views the entire context of the event and the reason why the chargeback took place. We will then use your no refund policy as a part of our rebuttal to the chargeback, but the issuing bank or credit card company, they make that final decision. The next two questions revolve around make good offers or alternative refund options. What if I offered an alternative refund, such as a make good offer, like a credit to a future event or a gift card? Aside from a refund, providing an alternative accommodation is the best approach to both preventing a chargeback and to getting a chargeback reversed if it does occur. We know that attendees are less likely to issue a chargeback if they are happy with you and feel supported. We also know that when an attendee issues a chargeback and we can provide the bank or credit card company with evidence that the attendee formally accepted that credit or make good offer, we have a better chance of winning that chargeback. For this reason, please keep documentation on hand to indicate whether the attendee not only received that, but also accepted the alternative accommodation. How does EventBrite know that I've offered a make good or an alternative refund to an attendee? Well, being sure to leverage our email to attendee tool is very important because our team has visibility and record of you communicating that with your attendees. In addition, we'll ask you if you've offered anything that you may not have included or indicated within EventBrite via your account email address. Another frequently asked question is, how long does a consumer have to file a chargeback? Well, there may be instances where disputes are able to be raised greater than 120 or 180 days from the purchase date. It all depends on the credit card brand and the dispute reason. For example, Visa's public rules state that products not received disputes can be filed either 120 days from the purchase date or 120 days from the last date of cardholder expected to receive that service or product. Other credit card companies and brands may have different distinct categories that a dispute could fall equally, extending that time frame that we're talking about. The next question is, my event is canceled or postponed. I've made a make good offer to my attendees. What is the best way to ensure that EventBrite knows to fight this chargeback on my behalf? Well, within the EventBrite product, organizers have the ability to change the status of an event to either canceled or postponed, but you can also update your event title, your event description, as well as ensuring that you stop taking registration sales. Being sure to use our email to attendees tool with information about the types of make good offers that you've made will also help us provide documentation to fight that chargeback on your behalf. For more information and support, please be sure to visit our Help Center, www.eventbrite.com/support. Thanks, everyone.